Welcome back, family. Before we begin this incredible story, make sure to drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from today. Now, let's dive into a tale that reminds us how true greatness never forgets its roots. In the gleaming halls of Laney High School in Wilmington, North Carolina, time seemed to stand still. The squeaking of rubber soles against freshly polished floors echoed through the corridors, just as it had 45 years ago when a young Michael Jordan first walked these halls. The morning sun filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the basketball court where legends were born. But this story isn't just about basketball. It's about recognition, respect, and the profound impact of remembering where you came from. The autumn air carried a crisp anticipation as the school prepared for what seemed like a routine visit from its most famous alumnus. Michael Jordan's returns to his alma mater had become less frequent over the years, each appearance drawing more attention than the last. But this visit would be different. Unknown to most, it would become a moment that would capture the nation's heart and remind us all about the true meaning of success. As the morning dew still clung to the grass outside, an elderly man pushed his broom across the gymnasium floor, his movements slow but deliberate. At 82 years old, James Wilson had been maintaining these halls since before Jordan had even stepped foot in them. His weathered hands gripped the wooden handle of his mop with the same dedication he had shown for over 5 decades. The wrinkles on his face told stories of countless early mornings and late nights, of watching generations of students come and go, of witnessing both triumphs and failures within these walls. The old janitor's routine remained unchanged. Arrive before dawn, ensure the halls sparkled, and take particular pride in the gymnasium floor. He had always said you could tell the character of a school by the shine of its floors. While the world outside had transformed dramatically, Mr. Wilson's commitment never wavered. He had become as much a part of Laney High as the bricks in its walls. That morning, the usual quiet was interrupted by an unusual bustle of activity. School administrators hurried through the halls, their phones buzzing with last-minute arrangements. Local media had caught wind of Jordan's visit, and what was meant to be a private tour had begun drawing attention. But Mr. Wilson continued, his work unbothered by the commotion. He had seen it all before, the celebrities, the cameras, the excitement. To him, the floor still needed its morning care, regardless of who might walk on it later. The first rays of sunlight had barely touched the basketball court when Jordan's security team arrived, conducting their preliminary checks. The head of security, a stern-faced man in an impeccable suit, approached Mr. Wilson with an air of authority. "Sir, we'll need you to clear the area. Mr. Jordan will be arriving shortly." The old janitor simply nodded, gathering his cleaning supplies with unhurried movements. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye, a scuff mark near the free throw line. Without hesitation, he knelt down, his joints protesting the movement, and began to work on the mark. The security team exchanged glances, their earpieces buzzing with updates about Jordan's imminent arrival. But Mr. Wilson remained focused on his task, his dedication to his craft, unchanged by the presence of authority figures or the promise of celebrity appearances. The moment Michael Jordan stepped through the doors of Laney High that morning, the atmosphere shifted. Despite the years that had passed, his presence still commanded attention, his aura filling the space with an almost tangible energy. He moved through the halls with purpose, occasionally stopping to observe the trophy cases that now housed memories of his earliest triumphs. As Jordan approached the gymnasium, he paused. Through the doors, he could see a familiar figure still working on that stubborn mark on the floor. A smile crossed his face, a genuine one, different from the polished expressions he wore for cameras and press conferences. His security team moved to clear the area, but Jordan held up his hand, stopping them in their tracks. The countless hours spent in this very gymnasium flashed through Jordan's mind. Every early morning practice, every late-night shooting session, every moment that had helped forge him into the legend he would become. And through all those moments, there had been one constant presence, the man who had kept the floors pristine, who had unlocked the gym doors before sunrise, who had never sought recognition or praise. Jordan's voice carried across the quiet gymnasium. "Mr. Wilson?" The old janitor looked up, his eyes meeting Jordan's. For a moment, time seemed to suspend itself. Here were two men, separated by fame and fortune, yet connected by the same sacred space that had witnessed the birth of greatness. The security team watched, uncertain, as Jordan crossed the gymnasium floor. His expensive shoes left slight marks on the freshly cleaned surface, but for once Mr. Wilson didn't seem to mind. As Jordan drew closer, the old janitor slowly straightened up, his joints creaking in protest. The world outside these walls knew Michael Jordan as a basketball icon, a billionaire businessman, and a global brand. But in this moment, he was simply a former student face to face with one of the unsung heroes of his journey. The cameras that had followed Jordan's visit weren't rolling yet. The press hadn't been allowed in, and in this private moment, something remarkable was about to unfold. Mr. Wilson's eyes showed a flicker of recognition, not of the global superstar, but of the young boy who used to help him stack chairs after school events, who would occasionally assist with mopping the court after particularly late practice sessions. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried the weight of decades. "Young Jordan, you've grown a bit since I last saw you." The simple statement, delivered with the same matter-of-fact tone Mr. Wilson had always used, brought a genuine laugh from Jordan. Here was someone who still saw him as the teenager who had roamed these halls, who had dreamed big dreams while practicing jump shots in an empty gymnasium. The contrast between them was striking. Jordan in his tailored suit that cost more than Mr. Wilson's yearly salary, and the elderly janitor in his worn work clothes, still clutching his cleaning supplies. Yet there was a mutual respect that transcended their different paths in life. Jordan's eyes focused on the name tag that Mr. Wilson still wore, the same type he had worn all those years ago. What happened next would soon become a story shared across social media platforms, news outlets, and dinner tables across the nation. But in that moment, it was simply a genuine interaction between two men whose lives had intersected in this very gymnasium decades ago. The security team shifted uncomfortably, aware that the schedule was tight, that there were reporters waiting, that there were meetings scheduled. But Jordan remained rooted in place, his attention fully focused on the elderly man before him. In his eyes, there was a growing realization, a recognition of the role that people like Mr. Wilson played in his journey, the countless unnamed individuals who maintained the stages upon which greatness was built. Mr. Wilson's dedication had never wavered, his commitment never faltered. While the world celebrated Jordan's achievements, this elderly janitor had continued his vital work in the background, maintaining the very foundation upon which dreams were built. His presence was a living testament to the value of consistency, of showing up every day regardless of recognition or reward. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows through the gymnasium windows, neither man seemed aware of the growing crowd of administrators and security personnel at the doors. This moment, suspended in time, was about to transform into something much larger than either of them could have anticipated. The nation was about to witness a powerful reminder about respect, recognition, and the true meaning of legacy. But for now, in this quiet gymnasium that held so many memories, two men from vastly different worlds stood face to face, connected by the shared history of this sacred space. The story that would unfold from this encounter would touch hearts across the nation, but its foundation was being laid in this simple, genuine moment of recognition. The gleaming floor beneath their feet reflected their images: the global icon and the humble janitor, a visual representation of how life's journeys can diverge so dramatically yet remain connected by threads of respect, gratitude, and shared history. What Michael Jordan would do next would indeed shock the nation, but the true power of the moment was already present in this quiet exchange between two men who understood the value of dedication, perseverance, and staying true to one's calling. 30D. Silence in the gymnasium was broken by the sound of approaching footsteps as the school principal and several board members made their way through the doors. They had intended to begin the official tour, but the scene before them made them pause. There was something sacred in the moment between the basketball legend and the elderly janitor that commanded respect. Jordan's attention remained fixed on Mr. Wilson, his mind traveling back through the decades. He remembered the countless mornings when he would arrive at school early, basketball tucked under his arm, only to find the gym doors already unlocked. The floors would be freshly polished, gleaming under the early morning light, ready for another day of practice. Mr. Wilson had never sought acknowledgement for these small acts of dedication, but they had contributed to Jordan's path to greatness in ways that few people understood. The old janitor's hands, still gripping his cleaning supplies, bore the marks of decades of honest labor. Each callus and age spot told a story of commitment, of showing up every day regardless of recognition or reward. These were the hands that had maintained the very court where Jordan's legend began, the hands that had quietly supported the dreams of countless students who had passed through these halls. As Jordan studied the familiar face before him, memories flooded back with surprising clarity. He remembered the quiet conversations they had shared during those early morning practices, Mr. Wilson's gentle wisdom offered between sweeps of his broom. "A clean floor means a clear mind," he would say, and young Jordan had taken those words to heart, understanding that greatness was built on a foundation of discipline and attention to detail. The principal cleared his throat softly, attempting to move the day's schedule forward, but Jordan raised his hand slightly, a gesture that commanded immediate respect. The gathered officials fell silent once again, understanding that they were witnessing something more significant than a simple school visit. Mr. Wilson's eyes held a quiet dignity as he stood before the man who had become a global icon. He had watched Jordan's journey from afar, taking quiet pride in maintaining the space where it had all begun. While the world celebrated Jordan's achievements on grand stages, Mr. Wilson had continued his vital work in this gymnasium, preparing it for the next generation of dreamers. The contrast between them was stark. Jordan in his perfectly tailored suit that spoke of unimaginable success, and Mr. Wilson in his worn work uniform that carried the honest scent of pine cleaner and dedication. Yet there was an undeniable connection between them, a mutual understanding of the value of perseverance and hard work. Jordan's voice, when he finally spoke again, carried a weight that surprised even his closest advisors. He began to share stories that few had ever heard, tales of arriving at school before sunrise, of the lessons learned not just on the court, but in the quiet moments between practices. He spoke of Mr. Wilson's unwavering presence, of the dignity and pride the janitor brought to his work every single day. The gathered crowd listened in rapt attention as Jordan recalled a particular morning when, frustrated after a tough loss, he had arrived at school early to work on his game. The gym floor had been newly waxed, bearing Mr. Wilson's signature shine. The old janitor had been there as always and had shared words that Jordan had carried with him throughout his career. "It's not about who's watching, son. It's about knowing that you gave everything you had, every single time." As Jordan spoke, Mr. Wilson's expression remained humble, but his eyes held a quiet pride. He had never sought recognition for his role in the lives of the students who had passed through these halls. His reward had always been in the work itself, in the satisfaction of a job well done, in the knowledge that he was contributing to something larger than himself. The morning sun had climbed higher now, its rays streaming through the high windows, creating halos around the two men standing center court. The gathered officials and security personnel found themselves moved by the genuine respect flowing between the global superstar and the elderly janitor. This was not a scripted moment for the cameras. It was a genuine recognition of the quiet dignity of dedicated service. Jordan's security team shifted uncomfortably as time continued to slip away from the carefully planned schedule. There were reporters waiting outside, television crews setting up their equipment, all eager to capture the basketball legend's return to his alma mater. But Jordan remained focused on the man before him, understanding that some moments transcend schedules and publicity. The story of their connection began to spread through the gathered crowd in whispered conversations. Some of the older staff members remembered those early days, recalled seeing young Jordan arriving early and staying late, always under the watchful eye of the dedicated janitor who kept the gymnasium in pristine condition. Mr. Wilson's dedication had never been about recognition or reward. His commitment stemmed from a deeper understanding of his role in the larger tapestry of education and growth. Every floor he polished, every window he cleaned, every task he completed with careful attention was his contribution to the success of each student who passed through these halls. As Jordan continued to share memories, his usual polished public persona gave way to something more genuine. He spoke of lessons learned not just from coaches and teachers, but from watching Mr. Wilson approach his work with unwavering dedication. The value of showing up every day, of doing your best regardless of who was watching, of taking pride in your work, these were principles that had helped shape his legendary work ethic. The gathered crowd watched as Jordan's expression shifted, a decision clearly forming in his mind. Those who knew him well recognized the look. It was the same expression he had worn before making game-changing plays on the court. Something significant was about to happen, something that would transform this private moment of recognition into a story that would touch hearts across the nation. Mr. Wilson stood quietly, his posture straight despite his advanced age, his dignity intact despite his humble position. He had never sought the spotlight, had never asked for recognition or praise. His satisfaction had always come from the work itself, from the knowledge that he was contributing to the success of others in his own quiet way. The security team's earpieces buzzed with increasingly urgent messages about the waiting press and the growing crowd outside. But Jordan's focus remained unchanged, his attention fully fixed on the elderly janitor who had played such a crucial role in his journey. The carefully planned schedule, the waiting reporters, the proposed tours and meetings, all of it faded into the background as Jordan prepared to take action. In this moment, suspended between past and present, between memory and reality, something remarkable was about to unfold. The nation would soon learn about this encounter, would be moved by what was about to happen. But the true power of the moment lay in its authenticity, in the genuine recognition between two men who understood the value of dedication, perseverance, and staying true to one's calling. The gymnasium fell completely silent. The gathered crowd, sensing that they were about to witness something extraordinary. Jordan's expression held a mixture of respect, gratitude, and determination. Mr. Wilson's worn hands still gripped his cleaning supplies, his lifetime of service evident in every callus and age spot. The morning sun continued to stream through the high windows, illuminating the polished floor that had witnessed so many pivotal moments. But perhaps none would be quite as significant as what was about to transpire between the global icon and the humble janitor who had maintained this sacred space for over 5 decades. What Michael Jordan did next would indeed shock the nation, would become a story shared across social media and news outlets, would touch hearts and inspire conversations about recognition, respect, and the true meaning of success. But in this moment, it was simply about 2 men connected by shared history, mutual respect, and an understanding of the dignity of dedicated service. The gathered crowd held their breath, knowing they were about to witness something extraordinary. The contrast between the 2 men, the billionaire basketball legend and the elderly janitor, would soon transform into a powerful reminder about the true nature of success and the importance of recognizing those who help build the foundations upon which greatness is achieved. The air in the gymnasium grew thick with anticipation as Jordan reached into his suit jacket. The gathered crowd watched in curious silence as he pulled out his phone, surprising everyone with this seemingly mundane action. But what happened next would set in motion a chain of events that would capture the nation's attention and remind everyone about the power of recognition and gratitude. Jordan's fingers moved swiftly across the screen as he made a call, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed gymnasium. He was speaking with his financial advisor, giving clear, direct instructions that made the gathered officials exchange startled glances. The numbers he mentioned caused several gasps among the onlookers, but Mr. Wilson remained steady, his weathered hands still clutching his mop, his expression unchanged. As Jordan ended the call, his attention returned to the elderly janitor. The basketball legend's eyes held a determination that those who had played against him would recognize, the same look he had when he was about to change the game. But this time, the court was different, and the stakes were far more personal than any championship game. The story began to unfold as Jordan spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decades of unrealized gratitude. He shared with the gathered crowd how Mr. Wilson had never missed a day of work in over 50 years, how he had arrived every morning before dawn, how he had maintained not just the building, but the dreams of countless students who had passed through these halls. The security team's attempts to manage the schedule faded into the background as Jordan revealed his plan. He wasn't just there to visit his old school. He had come to right what he saw as an oversight in recognition. The numbers he had discussed on the phone began to make sense as he explained his intention to establish a foundation in Mr. Wilson's name, dedicated to supporting the often overlooked staff members who make schools function. Mr. Wilson's eyes widened slightly, the first break in his composed demeanor since Jordan's arrival. The amount Jordan had designated for the foundation was more money than the elderly janitor had earned in his entire 5 decades of service. But the basketball legend wasn't finished. With another quick call, he set in motion the paperwork to ensure that Mr. Wilson would never have to worry about retirement, that his medical care would be covered for life, that his dedication would be rewarded with security and dignity. The gathered crowd watched as Jordan's actions transformed from a simple recognition into something far more significant. This wasn't just about money. It was about acknowledging the countless invisible hands that help build success stories. The basketball legend spoke of how Mr. Wilson's dedication had taught him lessons about consistency, about showing up every day regardless of recognition, about taking pride in one's work, even when no one was watching. As word of Jordan's actions began to spread through the school, more staff members gathered at the gymnasium doors. Among them were other maintenance workers, cafeteria staff, and custodians, the often unsung heroes of every educational institution. They watched with growing emotion as one of their own received recognition that acknowledged not just his individual contribution, but the dignity of their essential work. Mr. Wilson's response to this life-changing moment reflected the same quiet dignity he had shown throughout his decades of service. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried no excitement about the money, but rather gratitude for the recognition of the value of his work. He shared his own memories of young Jordan, of the dedication he had witnessed, of the quiet moments before dawn when they had both been focused on their respective duties. The story took another turn as Jordan revealed the next phase of his plan. The foundation would not only provide financial support, but would also establish a scholarship program for the children and grandchildren of school support staff. Mr. Wilson's name would be attached to an initiative that would help others achieve their dreams, creating a legacy that went far beyond the gleaming flaws he had maintained for so many years. The morning sun now streamed fully through the gymnasium windows, creating a natural spotlight on the two men at center court. The contrast between them remained striking. The global icon in his expensive suit and the elderly janitor in his worn uniform. But there was an undeniable connection that transcended their different paths in life. Jordan's security team had long since given up on maintaining the original schedule. The waiting reporters and cameras outside would soon have a story far more meaningful than a simple alumni visit. This was becoming a moment that would resonate across the country, challenging people to think about success, recognition, and the often overlooked individuals who help make achievement possible. As Jordan continued to outline his plans, Mr. Wilson's decades of quiet service began to take on new meaning. Each morning he had arrived before dawn would now contribute to opportunities for others. Every floor he had polished, every window he had cleaned, every task he had completed with careful attention would become part of a larger legacy of service and dedication. The gathered crowd watched as Jordan placed a hand on Mr. Wilson's shoulder, the gesture bridging the gap between their different worlds. The basketball legend spoke of how success isn't just about individual achievement, but about recognizing and honoring those who help create the conditions for that achievement to be possible. The story of this encounter began to spread through the school, then through social media, and soon across the nation. But unlike many viral moments, this one carried a deeper message about value, recognition, and the true meaning of success. It wasn't just about a wealthy celebrity making a generous gesture. It was about acknowledging the dignity of dedicated service and the importance of those who work quietly in the background. Mr. Wilson's lifetime of service was being transformed into a foundation for future generations. His dedication would now create opportunities for others who worked with the same quiet dignity, who showed up every day to do essential work without expectation of recognition or reward. The impact of Jordan's actions would extend far beyond this morning, far beyond this gymnasium, far beyond even Mr. Wilson himself. As the story unfolded, the gathered crowd began to understand that they were witnessing more than just a generous financial gesture. They were seeing a powerful reminder about the nature of success, about the importance of remembering and recognizing those who help make achievement possible. Jordan's actions were challenging everyone to think about the Mr. Wilsons in their own lives, the dedicated individuals who work quietly but essential roles. The basketball legend's voice carried clearly through the gymnasium as he shared his vision for the foundation. It would not only provide immediate support for Mr. Wilson, but would create a lasting legacy that would help others for generations to come. The foundation would recognize and support the often overlooked staff members who make schools function, who create the environments where future success stories begin. Mr. Wilson stood straight despite his advanced age, his dignity intact as he absorbed the magnitude of what was happening. His years of service were being recognized not just with financial security, but with the creation of opportunities for others who shared his dedication to service. His name would now be associated not just with gleaming floors and clean hallways, but with education, opportunity, and the recognition of dignified work. The morning light continued to stream through the high windows, illuminating this moment of transformation. What had begun as a simple alumni visit had become something far more significant, a reminder about the true nature of success, about the importance of recognition, and about the dignity of dedicated service. The nation would soon learn about this encounter, would be moved by Jordan's actions, and Mr. Wilson's dignity would be challenged to think differently about success and recognition. But in this moment, in this gymnasium that held so many memories, two men from vastly different worlds stood connected by mutual respect and shared history. The impact of their encounter would soon spread far beyond these walls, touching hearts and inspiring actions across the nation. But the true power of the moment lay in its authenticity, in the genuine recognition of the value of dedicated service, in the acknowledgement of the dignity of work that often goes unnoticed but remains essential. The news of Jordan's actions spread through social media with unprecedented speed. Within hours, the story of the elderly janitor and the basketball legend had captured the nation's attention. News vans began arriving at Laney High School, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like mechanical flowers seeking the sun. But inside the gymnasium, the moment remained intimate and genuine. Jordan's team had finally managed to coordinate with the press, allowing select cameras and reporters to document what was unfolding. The images they captured would soon become symbols of recognition and respect. The basketball icon and the elderly janitor standing together on the court, where both had spent countless hours pursuing their own forms of excellence. As Jordan continued to outline the details of the foundation, more aspects of Mr. Wilson's impact on the school community came to light. Former students began sharing their own stories on social media, recounting moments when the elderly janitor's quiet presence had made a difference in their lives. Tales of him unlocking the gym early for practicing athletes, staying late for student events, and offering words of encouragement to struggling teenagers flooded online platforms. The foundation's scope expanded as Jordan spoke, his vision growing with each passing moment. It wouldn't just provide for Mr. Wilson's retirement and medical care, it would establish a national program recognizing and supporting school support staff across the country. The initiative would include professional development opportunities, emergency assistance funds, and educational scholarships for their families. Mr. Wilson's story was becoming a catalyst for a larger conversation about recognition and respect for essential workers. Social media channels filled with hashtags celebrating school support staff, with people sharing stories of the unsung heroes in their own educational experiences. The elderly janitor's 5 decades of service were inspiring a national movement of gratitude and acknowledgement. Local news crews captured the moment when Jordan revealed another surprise. The gymnasium would be renamed in Mr. Wilson's honor. The basketball court, where he had spent countless hours maintaining the perfect surface for young athletes, would now bear his name. The same floor he had polished before dawn each morning would become a lasting tribute to his dedication. The gathered crowd watched as Mr. Wilson's composed demeanor finally cracked slightly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of decades of quiet service. "I never did this work for recognition. I did it because these students deserved a clean, safe place to learn and grow. Every floor I polished might be the one where someone found their passion, discovered their talent, or learned something that changed their life." Jordan nodded in understanding, recognizing in these words the same dedication that had driven his own journey to greatness. He shared with the reporters how Mr. Wilson's consistent presence had been a source of inspiration during his high school years. The elderly janitor had demonstrated that excellence wasn't about flashy moments or public acclaim. It was about showing up every day and giving your best, regardless of who was watching. As the story spread, other professional athletes and celebrities began reaching out, wanting to contribute to the foundation. What had started as one man's recognition of an unsung hero was growing into a movement. The hashtag #ThankYourJanitor started trending nationally, with people sharing stories of the maintenance staff who had impacted their lives. Education experts and social commentators began discussing the broader implications of Jordan's actions. They pointed out how school support staff often worked for decades on minimal wages, their contributions essential but overlooked. The foundation was highlighting not just Mr. Wilson's individual story, but the value of all those who worked similar roles in schools across the nation. Mr. Wilson's colleagues from the maintenance department watched from the gymnasium doors, their own work uniforms matching his, their faces reflecting pride in seeing one of their own receiving such recognition. Jordan made a point of acknowledging them as well, emphasizing that the foundation would support all school support staff, recognizing the dignity and importance of their work. The morning had grown into early afternoon, but time seemed to stand. Still in the gymnasium, Jordan's security team had long since abandoned their original schedule, understanding that they were part of something far more significant than a simple school visit. The waiting crowds outside had grown, drawn by social media updates and news reports about what was unfolding inside. Local businesses began calling the school, offering to contribute to the foundation. Former students from across the decades reached out with their own stories of Mr. Wilson's impact. The elderly janitor's influence, it seemed, had extended far beyond the gleaming floors he had maintained for so long. Jordan's voice carried clearly as he shared more details about the Foundation's future plans. There would be annual awards recognizing outstanding school support staff, professional development programs, and emergency assistance funds. Mr. Wilson's legacy would live on through initiatives that recognized and supported others who served, with the same quiet dignity. The story took another turn as Jordan revealed that the foundation would also establish a mentorship program. Successful professionals would be paired with school support staff members who wanted to advance their careers or pursue educational opportunities. The program would recognize that everyone deserves the chance to grow and develop, regardless of their current position. Social media platforms exploded with supportive messages as more details emerged. Celebrities and ordinary citizens alike shared their own stories of school support staff who had made a difference in their lives. The hashtag #Wilson Foundation began trending, with people pledging their support and offering to contribute. The gathered crowd watched as Mr. Wilson absorbed the magnitude of what his decades of service had inspired. His personal story was becoming a symbol of recognition for essential workers everywhere. The foundation bearing his name would ensure that future generations of school support staff would receive the recognition and support they deserved. Jordan's actions were challenging conventional narratives about success and recognition. His acknowledgement of Mr. Wilson's role in his journey was inspiring others to think about the often overlooked individuals who contributed to their own success stories. The foundation was becoming a vehicle for expressing gratitude and ensuring that such contributions would not go unrecognized in the future. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gymnasium floor, the impact of the day's events continued to grow. News outlets were picking up the story, sharing it across the nation. Social media channels were filled with messages of support and similar stories of unsung heroes in schools across the country. Mr. Wilson's quiet dignity throughout. The events reflected the same qualities that had characterized his decades of service. Even as his name became associated with a national movement for recognition of school support staff, he maintained the humble demeanor that had earned him such respect over the years. The Foundation's mission expanded beyond financial support to include advocacy for better working conditions and recognition for school support staff nationwide. Jordan's team began receiving calls from educational organizations and policymakers interested in collaborating on initiatives to improve conditions for these essential workers. The gymnasium that had witnessed so many pivotal moments in Jordan's journey was now the birthplace of a movement that would impact countless lives. The story of the basketball legend and the elderly janitor was becoming a powerful reminder about the true nature of success and the importance of recognizing those who helped make it possible. As the afternoon wore on, the impact of Jordan's actions continued to ripple outward. The foundation was becoming more than just a generous gesture. It was evolving into a catalyst for change in how society values and recognizes essential workers. Mr. Wilson's lifetime of dedicated service was inspiring a national conversation about respect, recognition, and the dignity of work. As the afternoon progressed, major networks began broadcasting live from outside Laney High School. The story had transcended sports news and local interest, becoming a national conversation about gratitude, recognition, and the true meaning of success. Inside the gymnasium, the impact of Jordan's actions continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Corporate leaders started reaching out, pledging matching funds for the Wilson Foundation. What had begun as one man's gesture of recognition was rapidly growing into a multi-million-dollar initiative. Business executives who had attended public schools shared their own stories of janitors, maintenance workers, and support staff who had impacted their lives in meaningful ways. Educational organizations began analyzing the broader implications of Jordan's actions. Studies were cited showing the crucial role of support staff in student success, their impact on school climate, and their influence on student well-being. The Wilson Foundation was becoming a catalyst for research into the often overlooked aspects of educational achievement. Mr. Wilson's story resonated particularly strongly in communities where school budgets were tight and support staff often faced difficult working conditions. His 5 decades of service, now being celebrated on a national stage, represented countless others who performed similar essential work with little recognition. The Foundation's mission expanded to include advocacy for better working conditions and fair compensation for these essential workers. Jordan's team received calls from state education officials interested in developing programs to recognize and support school maintenance staff. The Foundation's influence was beginning to extend into policy discussions, with legislators expressing interest in measures to improve conditions for support staff across the country. What had started in a high school gymnasium was now reaching the halls of government. Social media platforms continued to amplify the story's impact. Videos of Jordan and Mr. Wilson standing together on the basketball court went viral, accompanied by heartfelt messages about gratitude and recognition. The contrast between the global sports icon and the humble janitor sparked discussions about success, dignity, and the true measure of a person's worth. Mr. Wilson's colleagues from other schools began sharing their own stories, creating a powerful narrative about the essential role of support staff in educational success. Their accounts of early mornings, late nights, and unwavering dedication to student well-being resonated with people across the country. The hashtag #ManchaSchoolHeroes gained momentum, celebrating these often unsung contributors to education. The Foundation's scope continued to expand as Jordan outlined plans for professional development programs, emergency assistance funds, and educational opportunities for support staff and their families. Each new initiative was designed to recognize and enhance the dignity of these essential workers, acknowledging their crucial role in educational success. Educational experts began documenting the Wilson effect, the positive impact that well-supported, recognized maintenance staff had on student achievement and school climate. Research teams proposed studies to quantify what teachers and administrators had long known intuitively: that dedicated support staff contributed significantly to educational outcomes. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the gymnasium windows as Jordan shared another aspect of the Foundation's mission. A documentary series would be produced, highlighting the stories of school support staff across the country. Mr. Wilson's story would be the first episode, but the series would showcase many others who served with similar dedication. News crews captured the moment when former students began arriving at the school, having heard about the day's events through social media. They came to share their own stories of Mr. Wilson's impact on their lives, tales of encouragement offered during difficult times, of quiet support that had made a difference, of dignity demonstrated through dedicated service. The Foundation's influence continued to grow as educational organizations proposed partnerships to develop training programs for school support staff. Professional development opportunities, traditionally limited for maintenance workers, would now become more accessible. Mr. Wilson's legacy would include enhanced career paths for those who followed in his footsteps. Jordan's security team watched in amazement as the story's impact continued to expand. What had been planned as a brief school visit had transformed into a movement for recognition and respect. The waiting crowds outside the school had grown, drawn by the powerful message of gratitude and acknowledgement. Mr. Wilson's composure remained steady as he absorbed the magnitude of what his years of service had inspired. His voice, when he addressed the gathered reporters, carried the same quiet dignity that had characterized his decades of work. He spoke not of himself, but of the importance of creating opportunities for others who served in similar roles. The Foundation's mission expanded to include mentorship programs, pairing experienced support staff with newcomers to the field. Mr. Wilson's wisdom and approach to service would be shared with others, creating a legacy of dedicated professionals who understood the dignity and importance of their work. Social media channels filled with messages from school administrators and teachers, sharing stories of how support staff contributed to educational success. The hashtag Chidi behind the scenes trended as people recognized the essential workers who maintained the infrastructure of education. Jordan's voice carried clearly as he announced another initiative: annual awards recognizing outstanding school support staff across the country. The awards would bear Mr. Wilson's name, celebrating those who demonstrated similar dedication and commitment to service. The recognition would include professional development opportunities and grants for their schools. The gathered crowd watched as more details of the Foundation's work emerged. Scholarship programs would be established for the children of school support staff, creating educational opportunities for families who often struggled to afford college. Mr. Wilson's legacy would include opening doors for the next generation. Educational. Researchers began documenting the ripple effect of Jordan's actions. Schools reported increased appreciation for support staff, improved morale among maintenance workers, and growing recognition of their essential role in educational success. The Foundation's impact was already visible in changing attitudes and behaviors. Mr. Wilson's story continued to resonate across social media platforms, inspiring others to share their own experiences of unsung heroes in their schools. The hashtag #ThankYourJanitor evolved into a movement of gratitude, with students and alumni across the country reaching out to acknowledge those who had maintained their schools. The afternoon light filtered through the gymnasium windows as Jordan shared plans for the foundation's future. Regional centers would be established to provide training, support, and resources for school maintenance staff. Mr. Wilson's approach to service would become a model for professional development programs. Nationwide, news outlets began exploring the broader implications of the foundation's work. Stories emerged about support staff who had served schools for decades with little recognition, their dedication matching Mr. Wilson's own. The foundation would ensure that their contributions would no longer go unnoticed. The gathered crowd watched as Jordan and Mr. Wilson stood together on the basketball court, their presence symbolizing the connection between achievement and support, between success and service. The image would become iconic, representing the foundation's mission of recognition and respect. As the day continued, the impact of Jordan's actions rippled through the education community. Schools across the country began examining their own treatment of support staff, considering ways to better recognize and support these essential workers. The Wilson Foundation was becoming a catalyst for institutional change. Mr. Wilson's lifetime of service had inspired a movement that would impact countless others who worked in similar roles. His story had become a powerful reminder about the dignity of work, the importance of recognition, and the true meaning of success. The foundation bearing his name would ensure that future generations of school support staff would receive the acknowledgement and support they deserved. As evening approached, the gymnasium at Laney High School held a different kind of energy. The polished floors that Mr. Wilson had maintained for decades reflected the warm light of the setting sun, casting a golden glow over what had become a historic day. The story that had begun with a simple recognition had transformed into something far more profound, touching hearts and changing lives across the nation. Educational leaders from across the state had begun arriving, drawn by the power of what was unfolding. They came not just to witness, but to understand how they could implement similar recognition programs in their own districts. The Wilson Foundation was already becoming a model for institutional change, its impact extending far beyond its initial scope. Jordan gathered everyone's attention one final time, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood the true significance of this moment. He announced that the foundation would establish the Wilson Excellence Centers, facilities in major cities across the country dedicated to the professional development and support of school maintenance staff. These centers would provide training, resources, and community for the essential workers who kept schools running. Mr. Wilson's response to this latest announcement reflected the same humble dignity that had characterized his decades of service. His words, when he spoke, carried wisdom earned through years of dedicated work. Every morning when I unlocked these doors, I wasn't just opening a building. I was opening opportunities for young minds to grow, for dreams to take shape, for futures to begin. That's what this work has always been about. The foundation's impact continued to evolve as major universities reached out, offering to partner in studying the role of support staff in educational success. Research centers proposed long-term studies to document what became known as the Wilson Principles, the positive effects of recognizing and supporting the essential workers in educational environments. Social media platforms erupted with a new wave of support as Jordan revealed the foundation's next initiative. A national database would be created, documenting the stories of long-serving school support staff across the country. These narratives would become part of an educational archive, ensuring that their contributions would be remembered and celebrated. The gathered crowd watched as former students continued to arrive, each carrying their own stories of how Mr. Wilson had impacted their lives. Their testimonies painted a picture of a man who had done far more than maintain a building. He had helped maintain the dreams and aspirations of generations of students. Jordan's security team, who had started the day focused on maintaining a strict schedule, now stood witness to something they understood was far more important than any planned event. They watched as their client, one of the most famous athletes in history, demonstrated a different kind of greatness, the ability to recognize and celebrate the quiet dignity of dedicated service. The Foundation's mission expanded once again, as Jordan announced partnerships with technical schools and community colleges. Scholarships would be established for individuals interested in careers in school maintenance and operations. The profession would be elevated, recognized not just as a job, but as an essential component of educational success. Mr. Wilson's story had sparked a national conversation about respect, recognition, and the true meaning of contribution. Business leaders and philanthropists continued to reach out, wanting to support the Foundation's work. What had begun as one man's gesture of gratitude was becoming a movement for institutional change. The evening news crews captured the moment when Jordan revealed perhaps the most significant aspect of the Foundation's work. A national advocacy campaign would be launched, pushing for better wages, benefits, and working conditions for school support staff across the country. Mr. Wilson's decades of dedicated service would become a catalyst for systemic change. The gymnasium, which had witnessed so many pivotal moments in Jordan's athletic journey, now witnessed something equally powerful: the recognition of excellence in its most humble form. The same floor where Jordan had practiced his legendary moves had been maintained by a man whose dedication was now inspiring a national movement. Social media channels continued to buzz with activity as people shared their own stories of school. Support staff who had made a difference in their lives. The hashtag #AskWilsonLegacy trended nationwide, celebrating not just one man's service, but the countless others who performed similar essential work across the country. Mr. Wilson's colleagues watched from the gymnasium doors as their profession received unprecedented recognition. Their work, often performed before dawn or after everyone else had gone home, was finally being acknowledged as crucial to educational success. The Foundation would ensure that future generations of support staff would receive the respect and recognition they deserved. Jordan's voice carried clearly as he shared the Foundation's vision for the future. Annual conferences would bring together school support staff from across the country, providing opportunities for professional development, community building, and recognition of excellence. The Wilson Foundation would become a hub for celebrating and supporting these essential workers. The gathered crowd listened intently as Jordan outlined the Foundation's commitment to long-term change. Research grants would be established to study best practices in school maintenance and operations. Professional standards would be developed, elevating the work from a job to a recognized profession. Mr. Wilson's impact would extend far beyond the walls of Laney High School. His story had become a symbol of the dignity of dedicated service, inspiring others to recognize and celebrate the essential workers in their own communities. The Foundation, bearing his name, would ensure that this recognition became institutional rather than exceptional. As the evening approached, Jordan shared one final initiative. The Wilson Foundation would establish a National Day of Recognition for school support staff, an annual celebration of the essential workers who maintained the environments where education happened. Mr. Wilson's legacy would include this yearly reminder of the importance of recognition and respect. The story that had begun in a high school gymnasium had transformed into a movement for change. Corporate leaders, educators, and policymakers had been inspired to examine their own institutions' treatment of support staff. The Wilson Foundation had become a catalyst for reconsidering the value of essential work. Mr. Wilson's lifetime of service had inspired something far greater than individual recognition. His story had become a powerful reminder about the dignity of work, the importance of dedication, and the true meaning of success. The foundation bearing his name would ensure that future generations understood these vital lessons. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows through the gymnasium windows, the gathered crowd witnessed one final moment between the basketball legend and the elderly janitor. Their handshake bridged worlds of experience, achievement, and service, symbolizing the connection between success and support, between recognition and respect. The day that had begun with a simple act of recognition had evolved into something far more significant. The Wilson Foundation would continue to grow, its impact rippling through schools and communities across the nation. But its true power lay in the simple truth it celebrated, that every person who contributes to the success of others deserves recognition and respect. Jordan's final words of the day echoed through the gymnasium, carrying a message that would resonate far beyond these walls. Success isn't just about individual achievement. It's about recognizing and honoring those who help create the conditions where achievement becomes possible. Mr. Wilson didn't just maintain this building, he helped maintain dreams, aspirations, and futures. That's a legacy worth celebrating. The sad story of the basketball legend and the elderly janitor would be shared across the nation, touching hearts and changing minds. But its true impact would be measured in the lives it improved, the recognition it inspired, and the changes it created in how society values and celebrates essential work. The Wilson Foundation would ensure that this legacy continued, transforming one man's lifetime of service into a movement for lasting change.